Hey, what's up, guys? This is Jag from Jaggy Sports, and kind of special for you guys today, NBA trade deadline preview. Now, I got a small kicker for you guys at the end that's gonna shock you like you wouldn't be shocked, and I'm surprised nobody's talking about it, but I thought of it earlier today, and I was like, that could be an interesting trade. So let's take a look at the major trades that might happen. Obviously, you guys heard about the Cam Reddish trade to New York Knicks in exchange for Kevin Knox. But the main guys that are going to get traded, or I wouldn't say main guys, but you have, let's start with the Lakers here. Not much to move. They killed themselves on flexibility. So basically, you have I'd love for the Lakers to move Russell Westbrook, but they're going to move THT, Kendrick Nunn for sure. Then you have for Portland Trailblazers, you got possibly CJ McCollum, Covington, Nurkic. Then off Portland, Miles Turner, Sabonis, Malcolm Brogdon, maybe not, Karis LeVert. Basically everyone off the Atlanta roster, because Atlanta's GM said what the hell, so that's why he traded Cam Reddish. But he's possibly going to trade John Collins, Bogdanovich, Gallinari, Kevin Huter, and basically that's quite a bit, but let's take a look at this clip, and then we'll talk about the other side.
ESPN NBA reporter Tim Bontemps here, and with 4 weeks to the trade deadline, thought it'd be a good time to break down where the trade market looks like as we get into officially what is trade season here for the final few weeks leading up to the deadline next month. And I think more than most seasons, we're going to see that this trade deadline is going to take on a pretty unique feel, in large part because the guy that has dominated this trade market for the past several months, really going back to the start of training camp, Ben Simmons, there's still no clear indication that he's definitely going to be traded, or if he's going to be traded at all. As my colleague ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski has reported this week, there still really is no traction on a Ben Simmons trade. The two sides have met in Philadelphia this week, and nothing really came of the meeting, per Adrian's reporting. And that seems to be in line with everything that's gone on with this story, going all the way back to the summertime when Ben Simmons initially said, I want to be traded away from Philadelphia. Ever since then, the two sides have sort of been locked in a tug of war between Ben Simmons wanting out of town and the Sixers wanting him to be part of their team until they can find a deal that's suitable for them to move on from him. And until that changes, it feels like things are going to stay in a stalemate, and this Ben Simmons saga is just going to continue to go on and on and on without any sort of resolution. But that being said, there are still a bunch of other things in play in the trade marketplace. One of the teams that should definitely be active on the other end of the spectrum are the Portland Trailblazers. After the reporting from my colleague Brian Windhurst on Wednesday that Damian Lillard is going to have surgery on the abdominal muscle that's been giving him trouble for several months now, the Blazers seem to be fully stocked and loaded to go into a rebuilding mode. They've got Yusuf Nurkic, who's on an expiring contract, a talented center. They've got Robert Covington, a talented wing player who's been traded several times on this contract. He also is on an expiring contract. I think both of those guys are going to be very interesting trade pieces over the next several weeks. I could definitely see a scenario where both of those guys are out of Portland and rerouted to contenders, with some young players and draft picks going back to the Blazers, allowing them to try to retool for whatever the next era of this team is going to look like in the years ahead. So I certainly think, while certainly the Philly situation has not had any traction, you have to look at the Portland Trailblazers as a team that you have to assume are going to be active between now and the February 10th trade deadline. Another team that seems likely to do something between now and then are the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers keep playing close games, keep losing close games. Rick Carlisle has his team competitive every night, despite the fact that guard Malcolm Brogdon's missed a bunch of time with Achilles soreness. They've had a ton of guys in the COVID protocols. Karis LeVert's missed a bunch of time. TJ Warren hasn't played all season. The Pacers have just been a mess from start to finish. And even though they have a positive point differential, they're sitting in 13th place in the Eastern Conference. And again, they feel like a team that's primed to do something here over the next few weeks to try to get themselves to retool that roster a little bit, because the current mix that they have, while the Pacers have been competitive with this group, they just haven't been good enough to really get to the level that would justify keeping this group together going forward. So whether it's Miles Turner, whether it's Domantas Sabonis, whether it's Karis LeVert, like I mentioned before, T.J. Warren has been hurt, but he's a wing player. Wing players are a commodity in this league. I think regardless of what exactly it's going to be, I'd be pretty stunned if we get past the trade deadline next month and the Pacers look like the exact same team. So of all these teams we're going to talk about, I think Portland and Indiana seem primed to do something for sure.
All right, now let's shift to a few teams that could potentially use a deal to shake them up leading into the trade deadline. And I had two teams on this list that have now made a trade with each other, the Atlanta Hawks and the New York Knicks. The Atlanta Hawks sent Cam Reddish and Solomon Hill to the New York Knicks for Kevin Knox and a protected Charlotte 2022 first-round pick. And for business, we are struggling. We need to improve this roster. And moving on from Cam Reddish and getting a first-round pick, I think, is the first step in that. You look at this Hawks team, you could argue they had a couple too many bodies, too many mouths to feed on offense, too many guys to try to get playing time. I think moving on from Cam Reddish will sort of create a little bit better hierarchy in Atlanta, will potentially allow the Hawks to turn things around after what's been a really rough start to this season, far below the expectations they had after making the Eastern Conference Finals last year, and may not be the end of the moves that they make between now and the February 10th trade deadline.
Go to the Los Angeles Lakers, who lost again tonight to the Sacramento Kings, and the Lakers are sitting at 500. They have not looked very good this season. The Russell Westbrook experiment with LeBron James has predictably been a mixed bag at best. Their fit does not seem great. There's not a lot of depth on this roster. Austin Reeves has been a revelation as a rookie, and he's had to be for the Lakers because they just don't have the guys to play. Now, there's a lot of talk about packaging Talen Horton-Tucker and Kendrick Nunn together. Those are really the only two players making above a minimum salary outside of the superstars that the Lakers have on their roster. So if they're going to trade for any kind of player above the minimum, it has to be with those two guys. That's why their names have come up a lot. But the idea that the Lakers are going to turn that into some big-time package seems unlikely. So, we'll see if they can shuffle the deck a little bit. But when the Lakers went all in for Russell Westbrook and traded their first-round pick and all the players that they shipped out to get him, they kind of robbed themselves of the flexibility to do something now. And this sort of is their team. And they might have to try to resort to the buyout market to improve. But I'm sure General Manager Rob Pelinka will be trying to do something between now and the deadline to try to bolster up this Laker roster, which right now is in a, deservedly in a fight for a play-in tournament spot. Two teams at the other end of the spectrum who've really surprised, who will be interesting to see what they do, the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Memphis Grizzlies. Obviously it was really unfortunate that Ricky Rubio went down with a torn ACL recently, but he and Colin Sexton have about $25 million in expiring contracts. That's a package that could potentially bring the Cavs back, another perimeter player who could help them out, whether it's just Sexton or just Rubio or both of them or two of them in different trades. The Cavaliers could also get a designated player exception to make up for Rubio's absence, give him several $1 million salary cap exception they could use to trade for another player. They might be able to use that to add a piece, but I would be surprised if Cleveland is not aggressive here over the next few weeks to try to bolster this roster, as the Cavs have a chance to make the playoffs for the first time since LeBron James left 4 years ago. And the Memphis Grizzlies have been unbelievable. They've won 10 games in a row. They're the hottest team in the league. They beat the Golden State Warriors on Tuesday. They beat the Brooklyn Nets last week. They beat the Lakers on Sunday. Ja Morant's dunking on everybody, blocking shots at the top of the backboard. It's been absolutely incredible. I think Memphis will probably stand pat. They do have a young team. They have a lot of flexibility going forward. They have been very methodical in how they've done things, but if somebody comes available that could help them, maybe take another step forward, I think the Grizzlies have a chance to make a real run in the West this year. So, they're a team that I'm looking at the other end of the spectrum, unlike some of these teams that are struggling. Does Memphis maybe see an opportunity to really go for it this year and try to bolster that roster even further beyond where they're at? Because, as we've seen in the past with teams like the Bulls with Derrick Rose, you don't always necessarily have the long window you expect to. So I think they're good enough now. If they have a chance to really take a jump, they should really strongly look at it if that kind of opportunity comes across the board. And then there's two other teams I want to talk about that I'm not sure what they're going to do, and that's the Washington Wizards and the Toronto Raptors. The Wizards have Bradley Beal, who could be a free agent, and there's a lot of wonderment around the league about whether Beal is going to want to stay in Washington long term. The Wizards have slipped a little bit from their hot start. I don't think they're going to trade Bradley Beal. It seems like he wants to be there and that they want him to be there. But, that's a situation where if Bradley Beal suddenly became available, he would become there would be a feeding frenzy among teams trying to get him. He is probably the most versatile star player in the league in terms of being able to drop him into any situation and be effective with his skill set. He can be a good defensive player. He's certainly a guy that, any contending team would certainly be desperate to try to get if he actually became available, even if I don't think he's going to. And then there's the Toronto Raptors, a team that there wasn't really a lot of expectations for coming into the season, but they've got Fred VanVleet, they've got Pascal Siakam, they've got OG Anunoby, and now they've got rising rookie Scotty Barnes, who's been fantastic. And, with Nick Nurse, one of the best coaches in the league on the sidelines, Toronto's got a chance to be in the top 6 at the end of the season. So, coming into the season, there was some wondering around the league of, do they potentially look to move on from some of these veteran players and try to really commit to a rebuild around Scotty Barnes? But now they have a chance to be in the top 6. Maybe they do something in the other direction and try to add a veteran if they can get him at the right price to add to this team and maybe try to, win a first-round playoff series. So it will be very interesting to see what the Raptors do. But I think this whole discussion really brings up what is the truth of this trade deadline, which is that, generally there's a clear buyers and sellers, and you have a sense of where things are going to go. And this year, really, other than Portland, because of this Damian Lillard injury and subsequent surgery, this thing is just wide open. And I could see a scenario where a lot of teams make a lot of trades because they're all kind of scrambling around. And I could also see a scenario where very little action happens at all because there just are too many teams that think they can make the play-in tournament, and everybody's kind of just waiting for somebody else to do something, and the trade deadline comes and goes, and not much is going to happen. So it should be fascinating, as always, to see how it plays out. Keep it locked here to see how everything plays out, and we'll talk to you all again soon.
So basically, then that's what you get for the NBA trade deadline. It's not going to be super special, but you possibly have some moving parts. Everybody's keeping an eye on Bradley Beal's situation. He turns a free agent at the end of the summer if he decides to opt out. And quite frankly, he might, because they are not getting the job done in Washington right now. Even though Kyle Kuzma, he's playing fairly well, so he might get traded. We don't know. I doubt that. Ben Simmons, it was announced that things are not going well in Philadelphia, and they come to a stalemate. So expect Ben Simmons to stay put as a Philadelphia 76er. Unfortunately, we don't know too much about Ben Simmons' situation. And for 76ers to get that deal done, they are asking a lot in return. Not sure if they're going to get it anytime soon. So look for Ben Simmons to stay. Of course, all what I'm talking about is fluid, right? Like, it's not 100% sure right now. Then you have the Boston Celtics situation. Boston and Celtics do not want to break up the tandem of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. However, they literally have nothing to offer anyone. So I'm not 100% sure what's going to happen on that front. Golden State Warriors lost big time to the Bucks. But then again, Klay Thompson is not quite himself. Draymond Green was injured. So I don't think they do much at the trade deadline. Then you have the Bucks, who just beat the hell out of the Warriors. They got to compete with the Nets. So look for the Bucks to actually get some more depth for their roster to hopefully repeat if you're a Bucks fan. Philly, like I said, the whole Ben Simmons situation. And me and a buddy were talking teams like OKC, Orlando, and Sacramento were brought up. Why aren't they going for Ben Simmons? And OKC has a good thing going on. They're tanking the hell out of that team. And Orlando, I don't know what the hell they're doing. But Sacramento, they're not going anytime, anywhere soon. The only place that they might go to is yet another draft lottery. I think they have their own seat now. It's year 15. And if I was Sacramento, I'd make some serious trades because it's been quite some time before you actually, made the playoffs. But get Fox up out of there. Make a significant change or something. Do something. Get Healed out of there. Move him to God knows where. But you got to do something. So you can't just sit there and hope for draft picks after draft picks after draft picks and not make a single move. But yeah, it's the buyout market. If a lot of teams don't get what they want in the trade, look for them to get a buyout. And the hottest ticket free agent, if got bought out, apparently is Derek Favors off OKC. He has some years left on him, but other than that, I don't know who else is going to be a buyout candidate. And yeah, basically, right now, still the Nets are looking pretty. And Phoenix, I don't think they're going to do anything. They're young, they're healthy, they're ready to go. They're going to take on the Warriors. Memphis might retool just a tad bit. If I was them, I'd get some veteran leadership because I don't even know if they have any. And like if you take, for example, you got Steph, he's a veteran on that team. Chris Paul's a veteran on that team. James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving are the veterans on that team. I don't see a veteran leader on Memphis anytime soon. So if I was them, I'd get like a veteran off the Lakers or off Atlanta or something. I'm not 100% sure. Or Boston. So I would do that. And the last bit that is not released in the media is this. Cam Reddish, who used to play with Duke, got traded to the New York Knicks. And he's now playing with a guy, RJ Barrett, who used to play with Duke. Now, it is known to everybody in New York, make sure you get Zion Williamson. I remember the day that draft day, New York ended up getting like third place or something like that, or third spot, and they wanted Zion Williams so bad. They never got him, even though they're the worst team that year. And Zion Williamson basically said he wants to play in Madison Square Garden. No one in Madison Square Garden likes Julius Randle right now for that thing that he did, whatever, that thumbs down. So if you ask any New York fan, and I'm asking New York fans this, do you want to get rid of Julius Randle and bring in Zion Williamson? Basically, what I'm saying is, would you be interested in Julius Randle for Zion? And I think majority of people are going to say, yes, we want Zion in New York. That's a 3-member Duke roster on the New York Knicks. How can you go wrong? You can't go wrong. So basically, for this to happen, obviously it can't be a straight up deal. Julius Randle for Zion Williamson, the numbers don't work out, and Zion has a lot of potential. However, Zion is overweight right now, and he has a foot issue. So yeah, you never know, but that would be the perfect trade for New York fans and for Pelican fans, because New York fans don't want Julius Randle. Pelican fans are very upset with Zion Williamson. So tell me what you guys think about the whole trade deadline preview of what's to happen, and especially Zion Williamson for Julius Randle. This is Jag Mangat, Jaggy Podcast, or Jaggy Sports.